Okay, so now let's look at this question paper. So it's 2025 November. So it's we're given two graphs here, the graph of f of x, ax squared plus bx plus c. So just from seeing this, I know that this I'm dealing with a parabola, and then from doing this, I know that I'm dealing with a hyperbola. And look at this, the value of a for hyperbola, because remember the equation for hyperbola is y, a over x minus p plus q. And remember I said when the value of a is positive, you find your graph in the first and third quadrant, but if it's negative, second and fourth. And let's look at this, my a is negative, and look at that, you see my graph is in the second and fourth quadrant, so it works. Okay, so that I know that that's correct. Ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, from looking at my graph is facing down, so before I even attempt, I know I'm expecting the value of a to be negative. Why am I expecting to be negative? Because it's facing downwards. If it was facing upwards, I would have expected a to be positive, but now it's facing downwards, so I'm expecting it to be negative. Okay, so given those two equations, and they are told that P is a turning point of F at the point of intersection of the asymptote of G. The graph intersects at D, where D is the coordinates 5 and 6. M and T are the x-intercepts of F and G respectively. Okay, and then we're asked to write down the domain of G. So remember G of x, that's the hyperbola. So remember with hyperbola, when I'm writing the domain, remember domain, now I'm focusing on the horizontal, the x-intercept. So for which values of x does the graph exist? And remember, just said, oh, because it's the x, oh, I know I just get just x element of real numbers, because I know it's going to be all the real numbers except the asymptote. But x is not equal to, then I look at my asymptote. My asymptote for x is what? X minus 3. But remember, it's not minus 3, it's the opposite of the sign that I see there. So my asymptote here is x is equals to 3, not x. If it's minus 3, then it's 3. But for y is equals to 8. So then x is not equal to 3. That will be my domain. What about the range? But now they are not looking for the range for, they're not looking for the range for G, but they're looking for the range for Y, for F, which is the parabola. And I can see the parabola, the turning point is where it's where the two asymptotes intersect. So where the two asymptotes, so where x is equals to 3 and where y is equals to 8. So the x value of my turning point is 3, the y value of my turning point is 8. But now I'm looking at the range. The range is the y, the vertical. So then if I look, oh, I see. So then where y is equals to 8, that's where it tends. So I know it's going to go to negative infinity, but it ends where y is equals to 8. So then what's the answer? Then the answer would be y element of, to this, y element of, no, not the other way around, negative infinity to 8 included. Or I can just say y less than or greater than 8, because the values of y are going to be where y is 8 or less than 8, because from 8, 7, 6, 5 up until it goes to negative infinity. So both of them, if I write both of them, that's correct. Now comes the question 5.3. Determine the values of x for which g of x is less than or equal to f of x. So basically they're saying write down the values of x for which g of x is less than f of x. So remember we said g of x also represents y. Also f of x, we also said it represents y. So then determine the x values for which the y values of g of x are less than or equal to the y values of f of x. Okay, and basically the way to look at it is to you look at your graph, and you look at where your f of x is above. So where your f of x is above the g of x. So f of x is the parabola, so you're looking at the point where it's above. Okay, so we can see if when you start from the left, at this point it's below, because why? The g of x is above. So but then you look at from here, we can see that from here, starting from here, f of x is above g of x up until here, up until here. So they want where it's above, it's greater or equal to, so even where they're equal, and you can see that here also they're also equal. So then that means this would be where x element of 3 to 5, 5 included, because they said less than or equal to, and at 5 they're equal. We don't include, the reason I didn't include 3 because is, remember, 3 is an asymptote. Okay, so yeah, so 3 and 5, because why? Even because remember, even though it's not applicable because it's an asymptote, remember, because even though f of x touches 3, but g of x will not touch it because it's an asymptote for g of x, so it will approach it but it will not touch it. So at 3 we only find the graph of g of x, not g of x. So that's why we don't include 3 when you write it. Okay, now they want where f of x is less than 6. So what the graph of, if you look at the graph of f of x again, which is the hyperbola, the parabola, it's less than 6 here, right here. So I can see, because it's 6 here, y is 6 here, so that means from there on it keeps decreasing. So then I know from 5 until positive infinity, it's gonna be less than 6. But that means also, because 6 is, there's also 6 somewhere here, so that means at this value of x here, until negative infinity, then that means from here, at this value of x here until negative infinity, it's gonna keep increasing. It's less than 6 there as well. So if you calculate that value, you would notice that it's 1. So it can either answer in two ways. It can be where x is less than 1, or where x is greater than 5. That's one way of writing it. Or you can write it in the form of x element of negative infinity to 1, or x element of 5 to positive infinity. And you can see they said less than, not less than or equal to. If they had put the equal to sign here, I would do square bracket around 5 and around 1 to include them, but they only said less than, so I'm not including 1 and 5. So that is why you see the round brackets. That is why even here I said only less than, not less than or equal to. Okay, let's move this. Okay, now they're saying show that the equation of the parabola is f of x is equals to negative half x squared plus 3x plus 7 over 2. But you can always see here the value of my a is negative, which I already expected because my graph is facing downwards. So I already expected, remember when we started looking at the question, we already expected the value of a to be negative. So then we know that is correct. So then let's look at this. Okay, so easiest way to do that, y is equals to a x plus p squared plus q. Okay, so now y is equals to, I don't have the value of a, x, what's the value of p? Oh, I already know what's the value of p, because remember b is the turning point. So I know the turning point is also that's the asymptotes, which is 3 and 8, right? So then when I substitute here different, I'm going to substitute the different sign is positive there, so minus 3 squared plus 8. Then afterwards I just solve, but I want to solve for a. To solve for the value of a, I can take any point on the graph, of f of x, which the point that I have here is 5 and 6, which is d. So I'm going to take 6 as y. 6 is equals to a 5 minus 3 squared plus 8. Then 6 is equals to a, let me write like this, 5 minus 3, that's 2, 2 squared, that's 4, 4 times a, that's 4a plus 8. And then I take 8 to the other side, that's negative 8. Then 6 minus 8, that's negative 2, is equals to 4a. Therefore a will be equal to negative half, because I divided by 4 both sides. Then a will be negative 2 over 4, which is negative half. So then I've proven that a is negative half. Therefore, how do I write it in this form? Okay, so to write it in that form, all I need to do is say, okay, y is equals to, my a is negative half, x minus 3 plus 8. Then all I need to do to write it in this form is to multiply. So this is squared, so to multiply, so this is equals to negative half, 2 brackets, remember, so 2 brackets, this is x minus 3, 2 brackets, this squared indicates 2 brackets. Remember, you don't multiply it like this and say it's x squared and 3 squared, no. So because there's a minus here, if it was multiplication inside, you will do that, but because there's a minus or a plus, it's 2 brackets. This 2, it's outside the bracket, indicating that there's 2 brackets, so it's x minus 3 multiplied by x minus 3. So that will give me x squared minus 6x plus 9 plus 8. Y, so y is equals to negative half times x squared, negative half x squared, negative half times negative 6, negative times negative is going to give me a positive half, multiplied by 6, that's the 2 going to be divided by 6, that's going to be 3x. And then negative half times positive 9, that's going to be negative 9 over 2 plus 8. Then for the last one, then y is equals to negative half plus 3x. Then you add this 2, negative 9 over 2 plus 8. So one way to do that is to say, oh, this is 2 times 8, 2 times 8, that is 16. 16 minus 9, so 16 minus 9, that would be 6, and then 3, that would be 7. So then the answer here would be minus 7 over 2. So therefore I've proved it. Therefore f of x is equals to negative half plus 3x negative 7 minus 7 over 2. So I've proved it. So following that, I've proved it. So you see, if I want to write it in this form, I just multiply. But if I want to take it back to this form, you do it by completing the square. You just think you did in question 1, you do it by completing the square. So to take it to the other form, you do it by completing the square. And if you want to bring it back to this form, you multiply. Okay, now calculate the length of MT. The length of MT, so MT, I see, if you look at this MT, that's M, that's your x-intercept for the parabola, and T, that's your x-intercept for the hyperbola. So we need the distance between them. So that means we need to find the x-intercept for both of them. So we can start with the hyperbola. So y is equals to negative 4 x minus 3 plus 8. We are looking for the x-intercept, so we definitely let y equal to 0. So 0 is equals to negative 4 x minus 3 plus 8. Then we take 8 to the other side. Negative 8 is equals to negative 4 over x minus 3. We cross multiply. So negative 4 is equals to negative 8 times x, negative 8x. Negative 8 times negative 3, positive 24. Then we take 24 to the other side, becomes negative. Negative 4, negative 24, that is negative 28, is equals to negative 8x. Then we divide by negative 8, we divide by negative 8. Then x is equals to, okay, and if you put that in a calculator, this negative negative cancels, so it's going to be a positive answer, 7 over 2, which would make sense because this is 0, so I'm expecting my x value to be positive. So then this is 7 over 2. So then I know that the coordinates here are 7 over 2 and 0. Now I need to find the y-intercept for, the x-intercept for my parabola. So y is equals to negative half x squared plus 3x plus 7 over 2. So 0 is equals to negative half x squared plus 3x plus 7 over 2. Okay, so we want to destroy the fraction, so we can multiply everything by 2, and then whatever we do on the left we do on the right. So what 2 multiplied by 0 is 0, is equals to negative x squared, 2 times 3, that is 6x, plus 6x, and then plus 7. And if you want to divide by negative, this is 0 is equals to x squared minus 6x plus 7. Then we can do 2 brackets is equals to 0 x x. So this is trinomial. So then I'm going to look for factors of 7. Sorry, I divided by negative, so this is to change. This has to change to negative because it was positive initially. So now I'm looking for factors of 7. When I subtract them, they have to give me negative 6. So I'm looking factors of 7. Factors of 7, I only have 7 times 1. So then 7 minus 1 gives me 6. Then that is 7 and 1. So now the biggest value obviously takes the middle sign. So the biggest value is 7, it takes the middle sign minus, then here becomes plus. So therefore x is equals to positive 7, or x is equals to negative 1. Okay, so I know that here it has to be 7 and 0, and then here it has to be negative 1 and 0. So now I found all my x-intercepts, so now I can find the length. They want the length of mt, so from m to t. So that is negative 1 to 7 over 2. So that is simply, I can just find that. You can use the distance formula if you want, and that will give you the right coordinates, or I can just say, because it's in the same line, because it's a straight line, I can just say negative 1 uh, minus 7 over 2, and that will give me that. So it will be 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2, minus 7, which is negative 9 over negative 9 over. And even if you had said 7 over 2 minus into minus 1, that will be plus 1, and then 7 over 2 negative 9 over 2. But distance, because the distance can never be negative, so we just take it as 9 over 2. So 9 over 2, which is also 4,5 units. So that is my distance, or the length of m.